Wise. I'm a life and relationship coach. I've been in the people helping profession for 45 years now. And today's discussion is going to include a special guest also. And the title we thought would be Being Mature in Immature Relationships.
I'm excited for this one.
And my guest that you just heard is Yitz Goldberg. Goldberg, you might be able to spell. Yitz is Y-I-T-Z. And Yitz has been working with me as an associate for some time. He's a licensed social worker, and he does coaching with Jerry Wise Relationship Systems. And he loves Bowen Family Systems theory as well. And that's who I kind of gather around me, people who have been working on their own issues and also use Bowen Family Systems to understand the world around them and their relationships. Yitz, welcome.
Hi, I'm excited to be on and to participate in another conversation like this.
I think this is our second or third?
This is our fourth.
Fourth? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because we did one back 3 years ago, and then three in the past month and a half, probably.
That's right. I forgot about the first one that you had invited me to, and we did that, which was great fun.
I guess we're getting good at this.
Well, we can see how good we are today. The audience can make that determination.
Yeah.
But I think the topic is an excellent one because it is about being mature in immature relationships and the struggles that we have in the world in which we live, in which we're trying to grow up or change ourselves to become more mature, when the status quo of the relationships around us tend to be less mature.
Sure.
Now, Yitz, I have a question. So why is it so hard to do that? I mean, a lot of people will talk about, oh, it's just so hard to grow up. I don't like to be an adult. Adulting is so difficult, or whatever. We'll make fun of and joke about those things. But that's kind of how I feel individually in terms of growing up. But why is it so difficult when it comes to relationships? If I can ask you that. Or what?
Yeah. Well, I think that being mature in itself is hard, as you were saying. I think today in the morning I mentioned to someone how hard it is to just be an adult. And then when you bring in that, when you connect that with other relationships, then we tend to be more reactive. We tend to be more, we're more connected to these other relationships and these dynamics in the relationship. So we tend to be reactive to other people's immaturity. And I think that part of the struggle of being mature in relationships is that they bring up our own immaturities.
And so if I start to work to be more mature in this relationship, why is that going to cause a problem? Wouldn't that be good for all of us if I get more mature, or if I grow up some? Why wouldn't that be a great thing for me and everybody else around me?
Well, I think it depends on what level of thinking we are going to focus on. Because if we are looking to keep the status quo, then probably being immature is the correct thing to do. And if we are staying immature, if our focus is on maturity, then we need to learn to be okay with the status quo kind of going out of balance. And we tend to react to people taking us out of balance with our immaturities, or through our immaturities.
Well said.
So, yeah.
Right. We do.
How would you answer that question?
And I think I would answer it similarly in that if we have a homeostasis or everybody's in the status quo and how they function at their level of self-differentiation, maybe it's a dysfunctional level, maybe it's unhealthy level, immature level, high anxiety level, and we're all used to that. If someone tries to break out of that, it perturbs the whole relationship. It perturbs the whole system. Perturbing is a word. I mean, is a word. I don't know if it's the best word, but it shakes the whole system. It pokes it, to use. We'll send pokes to different
It
people on Facebook.
it rewrites the unspoken contract of the relationship.
Right. You are changing the unspoken contract because you're supposed to act this way, like in an alcoholic home. You are to act like there is no alcoholism, and your father is not an alcoholic. He goes to work every day and he likes his beer. So that's how you're to look at him. Well, if you come home with some maturity and education and then go, but I think dad's an alcoholic. Oh, now you're breaking the whole family contract that we have about what are undiscussables, what we don't talk about. This is the agreed upon denial that we have, which is unconscious. It's not often a conscious, it's an unconscious denial that we all have. And now you're coming out and saying, no, I think I've been affected by this alcoholism. And, I think dad is an alcoholic. Oh, that will not be good news to all of those who are in the family system. Siblings can scapegoat you or see you as the black sheep. Parents will believe you're being cruel or unkind or hurtful
Yeah.
because you're using these terms like alcoholic. Your father's not an alcoholic, though his parents were alcoholics and their parents were alcoholics, but your dad's not alcoholic. That's the exception in some way.
Yeah.
And
We don't even need to go to that extreme, right? I think immaturity could come up in the smallest interactions between people, even setting the smallest boundary with someone who's immature could spark immaturity in that interaction. It could shake the status quo. It rewrites the contract because, hey, you never stopped me before.
you
Uh,
never did that before, right?
yeah.
Or even
So
if we
there's a sorry.
or even if we start to say, I'm not going to triangulate with people anymore. So then the sister comes to me to talk about our other sister. And she goes, oh, how Mary is. How's Mary? Mary's driving me crazy. Well, if I decide I want to be more mature and not do triangles anymore, I said, I've just decided I don't want to talk about Mary. I'll just have to deal with my relationship with her, however it is. Well, now I've upset my sister who wants to talk about Mary, and I've always been talking about Mary forever in my
Yeah.
triangles. And now I'm starting to just decide not to do that. Or again, I perturb the system. I'm messing up the status quo because that's where you've always operated. And just like you said, you've never stopped us from talking about Mary before. So why are you doing it now? Are you better than everybody else? Are you, what makes you so high and mighty? And, and again, maturity tends to look like selfishness and a manipulative power play to those who are immature. That's what maturity can
Right.
look like to them.
Right.
And when really it's not, I'm just wanting to not participate in that triangle anymore. But I can't really explain that because I'm not sure my sister would even understand that. I'm not, she would, well, what's all this psychologizing you're doing? And again, there would be some criticism for being psychologizing. when
Yeah.
I'm just trying to explain why I've decided to make a change.
How would you define uh, being mature?
I think of immaturity as a low level of self-differentiation. And it is a high level of pseudo self. Most of us come from immature families and immature family systems, which is why we've learned to adapt and have this pseudo self. And that pseudo self could be so uh, exercised and gain strength that this pseudo self can leap buildings with a single bound, because we've learned how to be a pseudo self. And of course, a pseudo self, I think that was something, a pseudo self or a pretend self is both acquired by and can be changed by emotional pressures from others. This self tries to adjust to the emotional system demands, anxiety, by over adapting, over functioning, under functioning. Often the feelings and thinking is confused. That's immaturity too. When you bring your thinking and feeling systems in too much fusion, rather than there's thinking and there's feeling. That feel think is a part of that immaturity. So the pseudo self is acquired principles, acquired beliefs, etc., because they were required by the system or by others. And that's where we'll get into our immaturity. And then, and so immaturity has to do with those things. Another way I think about the pseudo self, which is kind of the immature, low self differentiation self, is someone who does not have one foot nailed to the floor. And people will just dance with them all over the ballroom, and they don't have any foot nailed to the floor. A foot that's nailed to the floor, they can only take you dancing around in circles, but you're still nailed to the floor. There's still some solid self there, rather than I'm just taken by every wind and whim and what do people believe? What have I been taught? And I've just accepted without question. And so that's kind of how I view that immaturity, or what
Yeah,
immature.
and that's a very interesting way to define it, really, through the lens of self-differentiation.
And that's not
Because
all there is to maturity, but that's
obviously, but then we could break down self-differentiation, and then it goes into deeper kind of places. Uh, but the connection between maturity and self-differentiation is an interesting connection, because there is no end to self-differentiating. And I think that's also an important message when it comes to maturing, right? Very often we tend to say he's mature, he's not mature, and it's never that black and white. Right? We all have areas, we all have people, even places that we tend to be more mature in, and other places that we tend to be less mature or less self-differentiated. Um, so that connection is an interesting one, because it reminds us to look for the places that we might be more mature and places that we might be immature, and maybe those are the places that we need to kind of inject some more maturity into.
And I like that. I hear there's some sirens out there.
Yeah, I hope nothing
I
major
hope
happened.
nothing has happened. I hope, and at least not to you anyway. At least at this point.
No, I'm still here. I'm still here.
Bowen said something interesting, which I was just reading, and somebody had quoted it, and he basically says, there is no self outside the other. Self doesn't
There
exist.
is no.
Self doesn't exist outside others.
Wow, that's so deep.
that's kind of heavy, and that was his view. That's why a systems view of self is so important, I think, because self is not just this individualistic way of looking at you in a stovepipe kind of way or a silo kind of way. Our self is as we are self with others. Self. That's what self is, not just self apart from others. Um, and so I liked his. It makes your mind. It stretches your mind. I think it stretches.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
talking about immaturity, the immature person lives by programming. The mature person lives by self-gramming. In other words, programming is what you've been given, what exists in the system, the way it's functioned, the patterns. But self-gramming is, in terms of I'm programming myself, is what do I accept, what do I not accept? What is me, what is not me? And then we have self-gramming, and that points to more maturity. When we are, because let's say, and I remember, I was a pastor for many years, and let's say it was always important for kids who maybe grew up in the church and then took on their parents' faith, right? It happens over in your area of the world too. Happens
Yeah.
everywhere. Kids take on their parents' faith. At some point in maturity, it needs to become ours or not ours. At some point, we either need that is us or it's not us, because otherwise it's just programming or brainwashing or family trance or, well, I'm a Catholic because all my family's Catholic. Yeah, but are you a Catholic by choice or are you a Catholic by programming? Which, you can do, but people do one or the other, so commonly. They're in the Methodist church. I remember I grew up in the Methodist church. You have people who come on Easter and Christmas. That's the only time they darken the church doors and believe themselves to be Methodists. Then there are others who truly take on uh, Christian faith and love the Methodist Church, and that is something they choose. Then there are others that just go just because that's the way it's always been. It's not something I choose, it's just something I keep doing because we've
Yeah.
always done this. And so I think maturity is when we take on and choose for ourselves what we want, what we believe, what are our convictions, what are our principles. And many of us were not taught to do that. Or in many homes, in dysfunctional homes, and as we've just talked about, I did a video on scapegoating. If you grew up in it, many of us were taught, whatever you believe is bad. Don't have any independent beliefs, feelings, or thoughts yourselves, because they'll be criticized in dysfunctional homes. So we didn't
Right.
learn to validate our own beliefs, our own feelings, our own thoughts. That was not taught, and often it was derided.
Yeah. So this brings us back to the title of the video of being mature in immature relationships, and how does one do that, right? Because a lot of times we're not taught to be mature. Um, some, as you mentioned, some families don't even allow it. Even if someone tries, then right away they pull them back into the immature system,
Right.
and it is a journey. I could say this from my own experience, right? That it is a journey of learning to be mature, and I think a few things happen when you're on this journey. One, you realize how immature you yourself are, or in my case, it would be me.
And I
And
think the point is, you're right. You can't gain maturity until you see your own immaturity.
Right.
It takes a lot of maturity to accept my own immaturities.
And even to see our own immaturities.
Even to see them. Right.
Yeah. So that's one thing that happens, that you start seeing your own immaturities, but not probably not everything. I don't think I've discovered all of my immaturities just yet,
Nor have
but a lot of them. Um, and I think the second thing is you start seeing other people's immaturities. And then there's this tension that happens between you wanting to be mature, but you still feel pulled by other people's immaturities, or better to say, your own immaturities that are still attracted to those immaturities. And there's the tension there that we need to talk about for a moment, right? That tension that exists when one tries to change in a system, the tension that exists, and it has every right to exist when someone comes to a system and tries to change it around, not because you're actively trying to change it around, but because you're changing yourself
you're just
and you're
even changing
changing the
yourself.
unspoken contract, right? So now we could start having the conversation on how could you be mature in immature relationships.
Well, and I think one way, as you've mentioned, is to, if we are aware that we will trigger others when we begin to change by what we're seeing, our own immaturities, the immaturities of others, we can prepare ourselves to not be reactive. Because what happens, of course, as you know, is, okay, I'm now seeing things differently. And I'm seeing things in a little more mature way, and I see a little more of what's happening. So then I begin to react based out of what I now am newly seeing in terms of the reality of what's going on in the relationship, which then triggers the immaturity in the other. And then what happens to their immaturity triggering me? Then their immaturity triggers my immaturity or my anxiety or immaturity. And then I may trigger back and reactively respond back to bounce, 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 because it's that ping-ponging of how the system is working. And if we see that there's that potential for that ping-ponging, we can work to be calm and non-reactive at the beginning so that we don't get into the ping-ponging reactivity. Yeah, but what about you? Yeah, but what about you? Yeah, but what about you? Yeah, and then we're just, we're going back and forth versus
we're back to the immature game.
Right. We're then back into playing the game again. And we want to work to stop that game for ourselves. For ourselves. We may not be able to stop them, we can stop ourselves.
Right. It's about expecting the immaturity of others, even allowing it, and being okay with it. Being okay that my immaturity is going to trigger their immaturity. And it might even, their immaturity might even trigger back my immaturity, but expecting that could stop that ping pong that you just mentioned. And I think also I think a major thing when it comes to this is understanding that people are allowed to be immature. And a lot of times when we could have this conversation, people could say, yeah, but they're doing this, and they're allowed to do that. They are allowed to be immature.
Immature.
Same like you are allowed to be immature, or same like you are allowed to be mature, right? So the second we understand that the other person is allowed to be immature, then something there could change in our approach to them, in our approach to this situation, and that when we expect that, okay, when we allow other people to be mature, to be immature, then that forces us to increase our own maturity and to understand how is their immaturity affecting me, and is this
Triggering my
something,
immaturity.
or triggering me, right? And is this something that I'm willing to tolerate? Okay, so when I expect the other person to change or to stop being immature, then that is an immature act in itself.
Right.
But understanding that they are allowed to be immature and allowing them to be immature, and then seeing, okay, they are doing what they know how to do and what they're allowed to do, but it's hurting me. Then where do I where do I set the boundary? Where do I put the wall, or whatever it is that needs to be done in that moment that forces me to protect myself, that forces me to be mature in that situation.
And the key to that is it's not reactive, it's adult choosing at that point. And I like the adult choosing because I may need to distance myself from you because you are acting in a way that is hurtful, painful, in some way that's over the line. If it's simply that you are being immature or saying silly things or calling me a Coca-Cola, like I used in other videos, just saying crazy things that don't have to bother me, then I accept that that's your immaturity. But even if someone, let's say, is physically abusive, that's still emotional immaturity. But then I can't be close to you. I'm going to have greater distance for protection because you
Right.
can't control yourself to that degree. Then I can't stay in this. It
And
just
if it takes off the responsibility and the expectation from the other person to change, and it shifts it towards ourselves. I don't need it. They could stay them. Let them do them. But that forces me to be me. And that forces me to do whatever I need to do that I could stay safe in this relationship with them, or not, or walk. Staying safe could be many things, especially in abusive situations.
and even in couple relationships, the way in which I want to encourage each spouse to look at new ways and to change in new ways and to adjust to what's going on is by saying, can you accept the other person just the way they are? And if you did, what changes would you make? Would you make? Not what changes should they make, but what changes would you make? And uh, and then that challenges them because they're going, yeah, but they just need to change. My spouse just needs to change. Well, if they don't, what do you need to do? How do you need to deal with this relationship? What do you want to see happen? And then that takes the pressure off the changing part, and the pressure goes on to the self-changing part rather than the other changing part, which is, again, I think a part of immaturity is my life is spent on trying to change others. That's immaturity.
That's a
Uh,
good question. The Can you accept the other person just the way they are, and if you accept them, what would you need to do, or what would you need
what would you do?
to
What would
change?
you, right? How would you adjust to that?
Yeah,
Because that lack of adjusting is causing a lot of problems for you and for the marriage. And it's easy to blame the spouse, and often we'll blame the spouse because we don't want to do that adjustment. Well, guess what? We're going to externalize that disagreeable adjustment to the spouse and go, well, they need to change. They need to do this. They need to do that. No, they really don't have to. But now what are you going to do? Now, does that mean I like everything that's going on or I approve of everything? It's not about my approval or liking. I'm not in the marriage. Certainly, I would not do it the way they do it. Certainly, I would not do it the way you do it. I wouldn't do it that way. I wouldn't live that way. But this is your marriage. You chose it. What are you going to do to, what do you want to do? And maybe you'll even want to leave it. I mean, that's another option. But better you know that now than 10 years from now while you keep banging on each other to change.
Yeah.
That's an awful miserable 10 years.
Yeah. There's a note that I wrote before our call, and that says mature people honor other people's immaturity.
Yes. Yes. And what's even cool, which we've already said, and a mature people honors their own immaturity.
Yeah.
As well as others' immaturity. And does that mean we don't want to change? No, we may wish to change and we may wish to deal with our immaturities, but we don't deal with them by non-acceptance. That's not how we deal with them. And most people want to deal with them that way. And getting back to relationships and being mature in immature relationships, so we've talked about recognizing the system, how it works, and how we are all, as I say, there's no self outside the other. And I don't mean that in a codependent way. And I think, it's not codependency that I'm talking about, that there is no self without the other. It's just that self is a part of the natural systems of the universe. We are a part of our race. We are a part of our family. We are part of our generation. We're all linked together in this emotional field in which we are a part of. So there is no self disconnected from humanity. I mean, humanity. They're just it doesn't exist. And so in Bowen saying it's a very systems oriented. Because people will say, well, what's the difference between self-esteem and self-differentiation? Self-esteem indicates the self lives apart from the system. Self-differentiation is a term that's used for there's a systems effect and uniting with the self at all times. And so now both terms are good. I understand both terms. I've used both terms. I mean, it's because we have an individualistic view of psychology and we have a systems view of psychology. And I'm not saying the individualistic view is unhelpful or cannot be of value to us. But if you ignore the systems parts, that's where Bowen says that's where we get into trouble. Then we don't see the whole map. Then we don't see the whole picture. We're just looking at the individual.
It really changes the way you see things, the way you experience things when you realize that you're part of a bigger system, and a lot of the emotions you're experiencing are probably or could be the systems and not necessarily yours, and then trying to find yourself within every single kind of space, every single person, every single situation. It changes the whole view of everything, really. And again, I'm talking from personal experience and also from professional experience, but it changes. It really changes everything to see things through this.
I was trying to think of the right word. There was a word I was thinking of. Because I was trying to think what we were talking about today, becoming aware of systems thinking, becoming aware of how the system works and looking at it from a 30,000-foot view so we can see what's going on.
Yeah.
And then how do I function in the system? Do I see how I'm functioning in it and get pinged, reactive, immature, pseudo self? How is that operating in my system, relationship system? And then the importance of having courage patience, tolerance, acceptance. We need all of those qualities to be able to make our change within the system. Because, as we've mentioned, the system may not welcome our change or welcome an increase in self-differentiation. And it probably won't welcome that. A healthy system would welcome it. An unhealthy system would not welcome it. And so we're in for a struggle. But the struggle is not with them. The struggle is with ourselves and how we're going to be. And I think, but we're going to have some people will be reactive to us. And that if we are aware of that, we can be calmer and predictive and see it coming so that we can, do something about it. I had an example I thought I might share yet.
Yeah.
A long time ago, I had a client, and I've changed all the data and information about this, so nobody knows who this person is. And there's any number of families who do these types of things. His parents were narcissists and very much into image and what we look like. And they had some money. And so for a Christmas picture, all the kids, all the grandkids, all the, the whole family, when they got together, all had to wear the same outfit for the picture. And that was done year after year after year after year. The man didn't like doing that. It was a problem getting his kids into the clothes. It was a problem. Now, parents were paying for all these clothes and all this stuff, but it was always a hassle. Everybody ended up being unhappy. Kids didn't want to do it. It was it just would almost ruin the holiday to have this wonderful picture memory. But it was just an image, but actually they weren't happy, doing it. And so he decided, I don't have to do this. I think I'm going to say no. We would be happy
Doesn't
to
sound
be
like it would end well.
No, we would be happy to be in the picture, but we don't want to wear the outfits and do all that, but we'll be happy to be in the picture. Well, you can well imagine what's going to happen to this immature system that everybody just goes along with the programming. This is the way we've always done it. This is right. This is the, Smith way of doing things, or the Jones way of doing it. We've always done it this way. And you're going to say no? Lots of pressure. And so he worked through that to be able to gain a greater sense of differentiation in the family, which also helped to break down some of this programming, cult-like trance that we all have to do so mom and dad won't be unhappy. Even though everybody else is unhappy, mom and dad won't be then, because they'll have this fine picture of year number 2020 that has everybody in the outfits, and they bought new outfits every year. So it was quite a tradition. And to go up against that kind of tradition was really a scary thing for him to do. And, if he's a successful professional, but here he is afraid to say, I don't want to wear those outfits and I don't want to drag my young children into all those and do this and ruin the day. I don't want to do that. And so it takes courage, planning, and also patience and non-reactivity as we go in to make those changes of us being a different person in the system. And accepting that they won't like this. They're going to have to make some kind of accommodation, either to have us in the photo or not in the photo, which is fine. We can be in or out. It doesn't matter. You guys decide what you'd like to do, and if you just want everybody in the same outfit, then we'll just stand on the side. If you want us to be in there, then we'll be there without the outfit, and you can call us the black sheep. That's fine.
Yeah.
And but that kind of, because he grew up in a family that you never got to decide what you wanted. You were always told what you wanted. And so he was learning to do what he felt and what he believed, not just what he was programmed to believe and required to believe.
Yeah. It's about being mature in it's about being saying or thinking or believing or living that being mature is more important to me than not triggering your immaturities. Not in a way where I'm trying to trigger your immaturities. It's just it happens to be
No.
that what I want to do triggers your immaturity. But I'm okay with that. If what I need to do is going to trigger your immaturities, then I'll deal
Then
with the tension that comes up, and you're gonna have to deal with your immaturities or not. But
or not.
I'm gonna do what I need to do.
I will deal with my tension, which is not yours. You will deal with your tension, which is not mine.
Yep.
And I'll accept that you can have tension. I realize we've been doing this tradition for the last, 40 years, 50 years, who knows. And I realize that could be a really big and disappointing move. And I'm willing to hear the disappointment or but it may be worse than disappointment. Could be anger, could be a fight, could be yelling, who knows what could happen. And then I have boundaries that, I still have a right. I have a right to not even come to the family gathering if I don't want to. I mean, I'm an adult with my own family. I can decide whether I'm going to come or not. I wish to and I choose to, but it's not I wish to and I choose to and I must go and do whatever mom and dad say I should do. And that is not a dishonoring of them. A lot of people would say, "Oh, you need to honor your father and your mother." Well, you should study that verse.
But that's what we were taught, and I think that's what's also I think also as a society, a lot of that is taught, right? You say yes, you make sure not to disappoint, you please people, you help people all the time, you put yourself second, third, fourth, but you put other people first. Uh, that's what we're taught, and and it's important to understand that that's not the case. Like, no one is saying that you go do you in a way that harms other people because you're looking
or
to harm other people.
or dishonors
Right,
other people.
right, right.
And
And
go ahead.
and I was saying, and it's remembering that same like we were taught it, the other people were taught this as well, and they may uh, experience our glimpse or act of maturity in a selfish way or in a way that's not honoring them or not honoring someone else, not respectful. It could be. It could be. And if they experience it that way, then it's okay. That's theirs to experience.
Theirs to experience. And I think people have grown up to believe that honoring, like honoring your father and your mother, means never disappointing, never disagreeing, never having them say they felt hurt. Because would someone be dishonoring me if my son drove and came with a foreign car and I was only for buying American made cars and he brought a foreign car and I said, "Andrew, that's hurting me that you bought that car." Is Andrew dishonoring me? No. It's just I felt hurt. And also I just put up a quote recently that was feeling hurt is a choice. And And that actually, no, I just felt hurt because of the way I think and feel. It's not, he's not dishonoring me in any way. That was a car he wanted to get, but it wasn't the car I felt he should get. And
Yeah.
so, how is that dishonoring me if he does that? But we will think of it in those kind of terms. So I think having that courage, that patience, and working on
Tolerance.
resilience and tolerance, that helps us to be more mature in immature relationships. I was going to look and see if there were any other notes I had.
Well, I had a note, and I
Go
think we
right
spoke
ahead.
about it a bit before, but the understanding that you not allowing them to be immature, first of all, is immature, and it's a
Correct.
tactic of control and pulling them over to you, and that's enmeshment right there, right? You're trying to pull them over to your side of the tennis net and not allowing them to be on the other side while you're staying um, on your side. and
Good point.
and I think the space between maturity, between your maturity and other people's maturity, or the opposite actually, other people's maturity and my immaturity, is uh, is understanding that uh, I lost my train of thought. But it's understanding that I am allowed to be mature, same like I'm allowed to be immature, and not trying to not being pulled to their side of the immaturity, right? Like you mentioned before
Mm-hmm.
with the tennis net, and me
Right.
not
Staying.
pulling them over. And this keeps in coming. I keep on mentioning this because I feel like I feel like knowing that there is going to be tension and knowing how to tolerate that tension between the maturity and immaturity is key. And I feel like understanding and accepting and allowing the other person to be immature as well as yourself to be immature when you are, I feel like those are the key elements in this discussion. If we are
I
able
agree.
to hold both of those spaces, then this this topic would be a lot clearer. Experiencing it, right, and actually being in situations where this is the conflict. It would be so much calmer for at least for yourself or for the one who's on the mature part. But after all, it would be also, but maybe that's not necessarily correct. But I was going to say that it eventually it could be also calming for the system. It could be, but it won't
No,
necessarily would be.
but you're right. It could be. And one of the thing is, just as anxiety is contagious, calmness is contagious too. So we can have a positive effect on the system by being calm. And now we're not doing it to change the system. We're not doing it just to make others change. We're doing it because we want to remain calm. And the more we remain calm, the less likely we are to trigger the anxiety in other people. And that's why so many people make I statements or I position statements when they're angry. And I go, that's not the time to state what your position is. The best time is when it's calmer and state your position rather than, well, I'm just so tired of this. I'm just so tired of you. I am not going to sit for those photos because I hate it and I've always hated it. And it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Now I've just boosted the anxiety up in the whole family. I have stated my position, but done it in an immature way and a reactive way. And now we've got a mess versus staying calm and staying purposeful and directed about what we want or don't want, or what we're willing to do or not willing to do.
Yeah, yeah. It is important to state also that when one starts to set boundaries, such as the one with the picture, uh, it could come out of from an, it could come out in an immature way, but the actual act of setting a boundary in a place that you've never done it is mature uh, in itself.
Correct. It could, and
So
we many times will do something mature or good with an immature envelope. You know, the message is right, but the envelope may be a little immature, and that's okay too. It's no different when you're working to self-differentiate. It's like being an adult who is a teenager learning how to be an adult.
yeah,
That's really what differentiation is. I'm trying to learn how to be an adult while actually feeling like and living in a system in which I act like a teenager and I'm reactive. And so it is a second adolescence to do this self-differentiation work. And so we will do something immature or too reactive or swing from one side to the other too much. But if you do the swinging, then you'll learn to come back into the middle. Never swinging, and that's the whole no man's land of no commitment. I remember Adrian Ben Cam, a priest and a psychologist, was great. And he would talk about the no man's land of no commitment. In other words, you just never make a commitment, and then you never, the pond never has a ripple in it. But you also don't have anything because you are not committed to anything. To commit to something means you might not do it right. You might not have it all clear. You may not be exactly correct, but you still press forward to learn what is correct, what is right, what is healthy. But we may have to start it in a less than totally self-differentiated way.
yeah.
I was going to share, there was another point I had, and I didn't know if you had any final points you wanted to share with folks. I had a solid self. I talked about a pseudo self. And a solid self or real self evolves slowly from womb, from in utero to adulthood. It evolves slowly. It is based in our own beliefs, our own convictions, and our own life principles. It's characterized by knowing our thoughts and knowing our feelings. We are able to think and feel. But for the real self, those are more separate. For the pseudo self, those are all conglomerated together. And feel think is just, they're way too closely, they're confused together and fused together. And we begin to become adults when we start checking our own beliefs, our own wants, our own desires, our own convictions, our own life principles. And that's where we begin to look. Even if we're not ready to do something about them, we start with the process of what do I believe? What do I want? How do I see the family? How do I see my marriage? How do I see my kids? How do I see my friendships and my relationships? How am I perceiving those? And what are my beliefs about them? Even if they're imperfect beliefs, and they may be limited, they may not know everything. And that's how I think about starting on the journey of the real self.
Yeah, and that's true. That it's true. It never, it's slow steps and it never ends.
And it doesn't end. That's right. It's a lifelong work.
Or as you
And
say, it's two life. How did you say it in the past?
I say
It takes two lives to self-differentiate.
right. Some problems take two lives to correct. And a total self-differentiation may take more than one lifetime. I like the book by Jenny Brown, Growing Yourself Up. And
Yeah,
that
I
might
have
help
it.
you to understand. Yeah, it's a great book. Roberta Gilbert's Extraordinary Relationships is very good. There are other Bowen authors, and if anybody wants to know, or have a list of those readings, please just reach out to me at my email. The email is listed below, and you can contact me and I'll send those out to you. Do you have any closing thoughts, Yitz?
Well, first of all, this was a super interesting conversation, and in general, I really like seeing seeing the world and using the words mature and immature,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like people understand that more, and we could, even in places that we believe we're right, and we believe that the world is, I don't know, surrounds us, and everything's about us. We tend to know when we're being mature and when we're not, when we're being triggered and when we're not. So I personally really enjoyed this discussion, and I think the key elements of remembering when it comes to being mature and immature relationships is holding that tension, being okay with that tension, being okay with with your tension of being triggered back with the immaturity and it meeting your own immaturities, being okay with them being with their tension of their immaturities. It's just tolerating that and understanding that it will come, and it's okay that it's going to come, and I'm expecting it to come, and maybe even preparing for it to come. And then on the other side is allowing that immaturity to exist, allowing that maturity to be there without asking the other person to change it, without trying to force them to change it. And I feel that having these two parts together basically answer the question of how can you be, what is the title? Being
How
okay with
can
your
be
maturity triggering, oh, being mature
being
in immature
mature in
relationships, sorry.
immature
Yeah.
relationships, right?
And I think those two elements kind of answer that question.
I agree.
So that's
And
how those are
and
my
the and I did want to say that the oh, you were talking about being able to sit with the tension, to sit with the anxiety. The more we can tolerate that anxiety, it will go down over time if we will keep sitting with it and not being reactive to it. That's what helps it goes down. And that systems anxiety goes down over time if you can sit with it and tolerate it and still be yourself. And I have that, there's that video that I have, Calmness is Everything. If you want to
oh,
take
I
a look
love
at
that
that
video.
video. Yeah, that I thought that might be helpful for our the viewers to watch. I also wanted to say, Yitz, you are taking new clients and
Yeah.
you've been working. You can go to Jerry Wise Relationship Systems website and you can set up an appointment online, pay online, do all that for Yitz. Nancy is also working with us, and Nancy Eisenman, and I think you would enjoy working with Yitz as well. You also can work with me, though I do my own scheduling. I haven't gotten to the 21st century yet. The So you can
And if
contact
everyone,
us.
if yeah, well, first of all, if anyone does want to work with me, then you could contact me through the website. You could also contact me personally on Facebook or Instagram or email. My email is yitz.go@gmail.com. That is yitz.go@gmail.com. And Yitz Goldberg, just YITZ Goldberg on Facebook or on Instagram uh, at YitzGo. Actually, I also started a page that I mentioned in our
Oh
past video
yes,
called
yes. Tell them.
Differentiated Self, and I post there insights that have to do with things like we spoke about today. So if you're interested in following, you could do that, and if you're not interested, you can do that as well.
Sure. And I'll have all those. We'll list all those in the description under the video today. Again, Yitz, thank you for joining me today. I have enjoyed it very much to talk about this topic of being mature in immature relationships. And I
Yeah,
want
well,
to thank, go ahead.
I was saying thank you for
Oh,
having me. I always enjoy this platform, and it's important discussions. So I'm happy to
yeah.
be part of it.
And it's great to be able to talk with you. I want to thank all my viewers and all the viewers who have watched us today. I hope you have a good day and be wise.
Always.